You can be the best at price, but that's a race to the bottom. If you don't want to be the best at price, you have to be the best at quality.
A big focus on UX and doing it properly is we've got to be proactive and get involved earlier on in the process and understand truly the problems that we're trying to solve, rather than just doing features from the backlog given to us by a product manager.
Understanding the difference between someone who's having a bad day and how your product contributes to that, with somebody who's having a great day and how your product contributes to that. And that's basically what UX is, thinking about people's overall experiences.
The knowledge that UX team gathers, or the evidence, or the research, etc., that they've done stays with them. It's not necessarily as impactful as it could be, right?
It's practically useless. It's like going grocery shopping and leaving all the food in the car.
Jared Spool is a renowned figure in UX design, with over 40 years of experience in usability, research, and education. As co-founder and co-CEO of Center, UIE, he's dedicated to training and mentoring the next generation of UX professionals. Jared is also a consultant for the U.S. Digital Service at the White House, advising on digital strategies and user-centered design. Known for his keynote speeches at UX conferences worldwide, he's passionate about helping companies build strong design teams and advancing the field of usability. Join us for our conversation with Jared Spool.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Jared. It's great to have you on. Been looking forward to this one for a while, so welcome.
Oh, yes, I've been looking forward to it too. So I'm glad we're finally doing this. This will
absolutely.
This will be one thing to check off my bucket list.
Well, I'll take that as some high praise. I really appreciate you coming on. I know you've had a lot of experience in the UX space and design in general for a long time. So I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. For those that may not be familiar with your work or kind of what you do, give us a bit of a short overview of your career to date so far.
Well, I've been doing this for 44 years, and I started as a software engineer, and now am neck deep in helping organizations use user experience as a competitive advantage.
Awesome. And I know obviously you've started Center and stuff as well, and you've done a lot with training. You've worked with some large organizations around the UX work as well. And you've worked in a few different companies. So I guess from your perspective, kicking off just straight out the gates, I suppose, is what is UX to you?
Well, if we talk about UX as a part of doing business with a company, a product, service, it's the experience that people have. Customers, users, employees. It's the experiences that they have. It is probably the last frontier for producing products and services that can propel an organization to become a market leader. You can be the best at price, but that's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be the best at price, then you have to be the best at quality. Some quality. Used to be reliability or maintainability, maybe the functionality, but now all those things can be matched pretty quickly. So it turns out that it's the experience, right? You can measure user experience on a scale of extreme frustration to extreme delight. And we've all experienced products and services that are frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the question is, does your organization want to be frustrating, or do they want to be delightful? And that's the work that I do.
Yeah, no, definitely very interesting. And I think just with the whole UX side, what would you say? I know we'll get into a bit more detail with this and more specifically as well. But I know, just from your content and other stuff around is that you say a lot around that we're not given enough time, or UX isn't given enough time. Often we are provided with the solution, or it's kind of just said, we pull, I think, a magic piece of paper out of a backlog bag, etc., and basically say, here's what we're doing, and here's what we need to do. And by that point, well, necessarily, I suppose it is too late, but I guess a big focus on UX and doing it properly is we've got to be proactive, right, and get involved earlier on in the process and understand truly the problems that we're trying to solve and the actual UX outcome that we're trying to achieve, rather than just doing features from the backlog given to us by a product manager or something like that, right?
I mean, yes, it's if you wait until you get features to work on from a product manager, you're not going to be able to do a good job. At that point, it becomes sort of a factory setting where you are just expected to work on whatever you're given in the moment with a unrealistic deadline, and the best you can do is to make things the least terrible possible. But I'm not sure that I think a lot of people who work in the UX field don't realize that they don't have to work that way. So they sort of just submit to that and then complain about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I know from a lot of your stuff as well. It's about focusing on the strategic versus the tactical, right? And we're not necessarily just UX, and love to get your thoughts on it as well. But isn't just about designing a wireframe, right? Because we can design a wireframe and it could be the completely wrong solution or not even address the real problem.
Exactly, right? Most UX work comes in sort of two basic flavors these days. There's tactical UX, which is probably the majority of what you see out there. And tactical UX is you're put in a situation where you have to just quickly put a product or feature or capability through some series of tests in order to get that product, better than it would be if you didn't work on it, and not always succeeding. And the problem with that is it's very reactive, right? You wait for someone to give you an assignment, you do the assignment as quickly as possible, and then you get the next assignment. The other flavor of UX that is becoming more prevalent is strategic UX. Strategic UX is very much thinking in terms of what the experience is like, not what the product is like. And it focuses on making sure that the experience that a user or customer or an employee has is a great experience. It's understanding the difference between someone who's having a bad day and how your product contributes to that with somebody who's having a great day and how your product contributes to that. And that's basically what UX is it's thinking about people's overall experiences. And in that case, you're much more proactive, which means you don't wait until the product manager gives you an assignment. You look down ahead at all the things that are on the roadmap, and you start researching what are people's experiences around the problems that those things are supposed to be solutions for. You try and build expertise in the organization so that when work starts on each of those things in the roadmap, the product managers, the developers, everybody is just far more informed about who the users are, what the users need, what their current experiences are like, and what their future experiences could be like.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you raised there as well. I'm a big advocate, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well, but it shouldn't just be left to like UX's job or design's job or whatever to understand the user or what we're actually trying to achieve, right, and the problems and all that. It's that there should be a shared understanding across the team, because it's going to impact everything that we do. But would you say it's UX's responsibility to be educating the team or providing them with that information then, as to the problems and what we're trying to solve, the actual outcomes we're looking for? Or what would you say on that?
UX is definitely in the best position to do this.
Yep.
So why not?
Yep. Yep. And getting that across to the wider team, and having a shared understanding across, as you said, the developers and the team in general. How important is that? If the knowledge that UX, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, if the knowledge that the UX team gathers, or the evidence, or the research, etc., that they've done, stays with them, it's not necessarily as impactful as it could be, right?
No, it's practically useless.
Yeah.
It's like going grocery shopping and leaving all the food in the car.
I like that. I like that. That's great. I'd love to get your thoughts as well now, as obviously you've had, as you said, over 40 years experience in this space around UX, and you obviously started out, as you said, as a software engineer, but into UX. How has it evolved over time? Has anything changed? The principles remain the same, but as research methods changed, has anything changed, or has it been consistent across that period of time? At the end of the day, I guess the goal is still to provide the best experience, right? But what have you seen
Well, 40
change?
years ago was the 1970s.
Yeah.
So 1980s, right? There were no personal computers. There were no Windows and mice. There was no internet. There were no mobile phones. There were no tablets. There was no responsive design. There were no web apps. There were no video conferencing systems. So nothing's really changed.
Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing at all. But I guess with the overall experience of, since you've got into the game, I guess, well, what is the I guess the different experiences that we can provide? Is it about keeping up with those trends from a technology perspective, and what's available to us to use, or what would you say that has shifted across that period of time?
The things that are most important is whatever we deliver making people's lives better, or is it actually making people's lives worse? We just got a new washing machine. And the first time we tried to do our laundry, it took an hour and to figure out how to start the laundry. And it took 3 phone calls. And it turned out that the piece of information we were missing was in the manual on page 21, but not in the quick start guide. But when we finally made the third phone call and we reached the person at the technical support department, she knew exactly what the problem was and was able to tell us what to do about it in about 45 seconds. I couldn't figure it out. My wife, who has been in the user experience field for more than 35 years, couldn't figure it out. I'm not sure we're better off with all this technology today than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago. So
Interesting.
I'm thinking we have plenty of work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. With that specific scenario, it just demonstrates the difference between, I suppose, how nuanced UX can be, and how important it is to understand, I guess, the whole breadth of the experience of not just, for example, as you said earlier, like one of them may have, from whoever it is, a manufacturer, but may have been like, oh, it's reliable, or we have got this warranty, or whatever else. But again, the overlook of the whole setup or anything like that, they're even trying to find information, right? Suddenly your experience goes from, oh, this is great, to extremely frustrating.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. It is a frustrating experience. to not be able to do something that you should be able to do. I'm sure some people know exactly what to do and somehow figured it out, but I did not. And as a result, I'm now going around telling everybody that I had this experience. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this company wants to be considered one of the best in the business, but the reality of this is that one moment is what sticks out in my mind about this thing that we paid a lot of money for.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, it creates that, as we said earlier, but frustrating experience and deters you from future interactions with that brand or transactions, I guess, with that brand. Well, at least it challenges that. And I guess probably leads me on to a next point around understanding your thoughts of how do you measure or quantify kind of the results from UX and looking at kind of outcomes over outputs. But something like that, it's, I guess, particularly that scenario, but is harder to measure. But what's your advice on that about quantifying or at least measuring whether we're heading in the right direction or not? How do we know that?
I don't think it's that hard to measure the experience we had. How long does it take to get the first load started? How many phone calls did we have to make to get the first load started? I mean, that to me seems like a fairly simple measurement.
Yeah, I agree with that. How would you track it?
You ask people. Everybody gets fixated on this idea that somehow we have to collect all this data through digital means. We don't have to collect the data through digital means. We just have to talk to people. In fact, the more we talk to people, the more we build a relationship with them. And the more we build a relationship with them, the more they tend to like us. I don't understand this resistance to building relationships with people. You have a bunch of mates that you go and you hang out with, right? You all go to the pub and you have a wonderful evening. One of you sort of suggested this idea. One of you was the ringleader, said, "Hey, let's go to the pub and let's get some pints and let's have a wonderful evening." So that's what you do. And then, of course, as soon as everybody gets home, your mate who went off and organized this whole ordeal, of course, sends you a net promoter score. Would you recommend drinking with Julian to your friends and colleagues? No, nobody does that. If you had a great time, the next time you talk, you're going to say, "Dude, Friday night was killer. Thank you." Or, "Dude, let's not do that again." Right?
Yeah,
That's how you have a relationship with people.
definitely. I totally agree. And I think it's a massively, from my perspective, we obviously, we work more on the B2B and more internal applications mostly, not always, but essentially same principles apply of talking to what I call the frontline staff or users essentially, and trying to understand what their problems are, what their current experience is, kind of what the future experience could possibly be, the outcome that they're trying to achieve. And then further than that, when we've actually implemented something, getting that raw, I suppose, as you said, relationship and understanding it is a much more, at least in my experience anyway, natural way. And you seem to get a lot more information in a shorter space of time, I guess, that's actually useful over against, as you said, just useless information that's not really guiding any decisions actually.
Right. I mean, user experience is a relationship business. We need to understand the relationship between us and our customer, the relationship between us and fellow employees.
Yeah.
The organization already has people who try to build relationships. They have a sales force, they have support people. And when a customer has a challenge, who do they talk to? They talk to the salespeople, they talk to the support people. The three people that we called when we could not get our washing machine to wash. The first one was the guy who installed it. The second one was the guy who sold it to us. And he gave us the number of the manufacturer's customer service line. So we talked to someone in customer support. So those are 3 people. And we already had a relationship with the first 2 people.
Yeah.
We knew that the guy who installed it had run it once. So we figured he knew how to turn it on. And he couldn't remember. And so I contacted the guy who sold it because, he sells them. He should know how to turn it on. And he was like, well, I don't know what's wrong. It should work. And then, he gave me the support person who knew exactly what was wrong. Now, are any of those people talking to the product people? Probably not. So this problem goes unresolved.
Just a repeating cycle, right?
Even though it's pretty clear in the conversation I had with the support person who was able to diagnose the problem in the first, 45 seconds that I was talking, that this problem happens a lot. Yeah. And so there we go. I was eating up her time because I made her stay on the phone until the thing started. I was eating up her time to do something that I should have been done on my own an hour earlier. How expensive is that for the business? How much money is that manufacturer spending on that? Not to mention their salespeople and their installation people. How much money are they spending? What if they spent it on building a better UI? What if they spent it on building a better user experience? You want a story? I'll give you a story.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
So I have a client. They make this really cool market analysis software. It does amazing things to give you a sense as to who your customers are and what your customers need. And their primary customers are Fortune 500 companies. So the 500 biggest companies in the world. The software package the average installation costs several $1,000,000. So these folks are raking in the cash with the 500 customers that they have, potential customers. And I think they have 2/3 of those customers at this point. So out of 500 folks, they have, about 330 of them. So that's their market. The thing is that these customers pay so much money that the company basically, in addition to the software, gives them an employee, someone who works for the software manufacturer, who then is resident at the Fortune 500 company. They have an office at the Fortune 500 company. And that's all they do is work with them to get the most out of the software. They call them the customer success team. And the customer success team is embedded in the company. And there's 300 people on the customer success team, which is why I know they have 300 clients, because everybody gets one. What the customer success team actually does, what they do day to day, the first thing they do is they install the software, because it turns out the software is really hard to install. It has to be customized in a variety of ways. There's a lot of training these people get on how to install the software the best way. They have a dedicated support team just to support the customer success people, to answer any questions about the installing of the product. So that's the first thing. The second thing that they do is they create and run, and this is the part that I love the best, interpret the reports. So this thing produces all these reports about what's happening in the marketplace for the products and services that these companies offer. And the reporting tool is so complex that these trained customer success people are the only ones who can run it. So they translate what the customer needs into what the reporting tool needs. And then they run the reports. And then the reporting tool is so bad at producing reports that people understand that part of the job of this customer success team is to translate those reports back into a language that the customer understands. Wow. So you can think of the customer success team as a layer of user interface. right? The customer interacts with the customer success team. The customer success team then translates what the customer needs into the product's UI, and then the product does
Yeah.
its thing. And then the customer success person translates what the product says back to the actual paying customer. So 300 customer success people. When you add in their salary and their benefits and the equipment and travel costs and stuff, the company's paying what? Approximately $200,000 per customer success person.
Yeah.
$200,000 times 300 people is $60 million. So they're
Yeah.
spending $60 million on a layer of UI. Now, the same company has 12 UX people.
It's the irony.
Right. So the 300 customer success people, next year, the company wants to go down market. They want to start selling to the next 500 people, right? They want to open up to the full Fortune 1000. There's 500 new clients that they don't have yet. And so to support those people, they want to hire another 60 customer success people. So next year, they'll have 360 people, which is now $72 million that they're paying for this.
Yeah.
So this year and next year, it's $132 million.
Yeah. It's a big problem.
How much could they make the installation and reporting tool if they had $132 million to spend on that?
A lot.
Exactly. Right? So that's the value of UX.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate the story. It's a great story from experience, and the listeners will definitely be able to understand. I think the important thing is, if you don't understand the true cause or the root cause, right, you can't really come up with a solution. And that's why I guess their solution was initially is the fact around, okay, we'll just put people, rather than solve the true underlying problem, right, we'll somewhat put a band-aid fix, or we'll just add another layer, right? Is that the right way to look at it?
Well, that's what they did, right? They made decisions. And the thing is that they think they made a great decision. It seems like a really bad decision to me.
Yeah.
You could get more than 600 UI people or UX people for $132 million. If you had 600, if you went from 12 to 600 UX people, what could you be doing that would make the product better? Amazing things. But they're spending it on this Band-Aid instead of spending it on the actual problem. And here's the thing. They're not going to let all those customer success people go at the end of 2025. They're going to hire more.
Yeah. And more and more and more.
And more and more. They're going to keep spending millions, hundreds of millions of dollars instead of fixing the problems.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. How then, from there's kind of a two-pronged question, I guess. My next question would be, like, one of them is, like, how do you secure kind of leadership buy-in or executive buy-in that this UX at this level is appreciated and actually wanted, I guess, right? Or is it a lost cause if people at leadership don't care about it and aren't looking for that? And then I guess the second point of that is, for someone that doesn't, or a company or something like this that thinks they're doing the right thing, does it take an external perspective, like, someone like yourself or us or someone, to come in and show them that? Or how can companies actually, I suppose, think a bit differently, or whatever? How would you advise them to say, hey, you need to look at it like this in order to spot the problem?
I think the problem's right in front of them. They're just not connecting the dots. So someone has to come in and connect the dots.
Yeah.
Right? We've got 12 UX people. We spend a little over $1 million on 12 UX people, maybe 2 million. Okay. Right. Maybe it's 2.5 million that we're spending on UX. We're spending 60 million this year, 72 million next year. If we keep increasing by 20%, in 5 years, we're going to have spent more than $500 million on people who we only hire because we aren't investing in UX people. If these people went and only completed the first year of business school, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is that they don't realize what the customer success people do all day. And they don't know that the reason the customer success people are needed is because they haven't made the investment they need to make in UX. And the UX people think this is the way it has to be because this is the way it is everywhere.
Yeah.
So they're not saying anything.
Yeah. And no doubt there's probably, if there's obviously that's a large inefficiency, but there's other products, businesses, a lot of them, right, around the globe that have a similar, maybe smaller scale, maybe even bigger scale, right? Problems, a similar idea that there are things that can be done, changes to processes, or even just as you say, like a different way of looking at it and thinking about it, and suddenly you realize the true cost of what we're actually getting in cost, but then also even opportunity costs for furthering that experience, I guess, is the point as well.
Sure. Yeah. So let me tell you about Sonos.
Yeah. I was going to get to that. Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Okay. So Sonos makes speakers. Sonos. You go to their website, sonos.com. They have a link that says products. You click on that. It shows you speakers, high-end musical speakers, hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars of equipment. Customers buy tens of thousands of dollars of this stuff. It's a luxury brand.
They're good speakers.
They're good speakers. I've got 6 or 7. A couple years ago, they hire a new CEO because they want the company to become bigger and more profitable, and most importantly, to raise the share price, because that's what capitalism's all about. Return on investment, baby. So the new CEO puts together a program, gets the best engineers in the company together, says, we're going to build a new generation of our products. We're going to take it just a step further. Most advanced speakers that are on the market today. People get excited. They start working on this project. If you pull down the product menu, one of the things you won't see is any software. But when you get the speakers, the first thing you have to do is download the software, because the only way to run the speakers is to use an app, just like everything. And so you have to use the app. But the app's not a product. It's not what they make. I mean, they make it, but it's not what they think about. It's like the box that the thing comes in. They want it to be nice, but that's not what they're selling. They're not selling the box. They're selling speakers that make beautiful music.
Yeah.
So that's what they're making. So as they're working on the third generation, this new generation of their products, they realize that they're going to have to make some significant changes to the app. Now, I'm going to stop here and just say that I have in the past worked with Sonos. I have met their UX team. But everything that I'm going to tell you here is just public knowledge. I actually haven't worked with Sonos for more than a year, so I haven't talked to anybody there, so I don't know the actual facts. I am just telling you what's in the press and guessing at some things because I've been around this business for a long time. It's not hard to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
So back to the story. So they have to make changes to the app that they had. And the thing is, they haven't updated this app for a long time, like 5 or 6 years. So they're thinking, you know what? Let's just rewrite it. The old app is clumsy. Let's rewrite the whole thing in React or something, make it faster, make it better, do all the things. Doesn't seem like that big a deal, right? everybody's focused on the new hardware. They're not thinking about the app. The app is a thing. They've always had the app. It'll just be fine. So they do that. They start from scratch. They rewrite the app. I'm going to guess that none of the people who built the last generation of the app are working on the app today. It's not a glorious job in the company. They've had a bunch of turnover. It's a new team. Nobody who built the last app knows a whole lot about the new app, but it's okay. It's not that complicated. It plays music. It stops playing music. How complicated can it be? They work on it. They rebuild it. In March, in anticipation of their new hardware, they're going to start rolling their hardware out in April. They roll out the new app. The new app, of course, is always behind the hardware in that you have to figure out what the hardware is going to do first before you figure out what the app's going to do. But you have to have the app ready before the hardware comes out. So it has a much shortened schedule than the hardware does. And I'm sure that the people were pressured and rushed, and there were decisions made as to what's necessary for version 1 and what isn't necessary for version 1. The typical things that happen in software development. So in March, they ship it. And immediately they start getting feedback from customers. Remember, the new hardware has not been released yet. But the old hardware, millions of customers are using. And suddenly it stops working. It's buggy. It's missing features that the old app had. Being able to set an alarm. Turns out that one of the things that customers do with the app is they set wake-up alarms. So you don't have to wake up to your phone buzzing or playing the same stupid 10-note sequence, right? You can wake up to your favorite Jimi Hendrix album. People love that feature, but it's missing from the app, possibly because the team that built the new app didn't know the feature was in the old app. Or maybe if they had some sort of measurements that said, what's the most used functionality? The alarm wouldn't show up because you set it once and you leave it alone. So for whatever reason, I don't know why, the alarm is missing. There's about 2 dozen features that are just missing. It also doesn't work well with the old generation of hardware. In some cases, it doesn't recognize the speaker, or if the speaker gets disconnected from the network, it won't see it again. A whole bunch of things with the old generation of the hardware, because they use a different protocol than the new generation of the hardware does. And so all of these things are breaking. Sonos support is overwhelmed, and they don't have any remedies for this. They didn't expect it. They don't have a fix. They don't know what to do. So people turn to social media, and they start complaining. Is anybody else getting into this? And the social media crowd just grows and grows and grows. A writer for the Washington Post is also a Sonos customer, is seeing this conversation happening on social media, starts to write a story about this, contacts Sonos's press department. Do you have any comments about all this fuss on social media? Next thing you know, the writer's getting an email back from the new CEO. Yes, we are aware. We are working our hardest to fix this. We didn't realize that there was a problem. Yada, yada, yada. I'm sorry. Our customers are inconvenienced. We'll have a new app out really soon. That was in March. There are still people complaining about problems. We are now in October. In March, Sonos stock was at an all-time high. Since then, it has lost more than $930 million of market cap. It's down by a third.
Yeah.
All because the user experience from this app isn't working. And it's gotten worse, right? I mean, the app is fine. They've put out releases. They've fixed some of the things. The alarms are back. But customers are still saying, you know what? I'm ditching my existing hardware. I can't trust Sonos anymore. I'm going someplace else. They announced one of the new pieces of hardware, a set of headphones. The new hardware is getting reviewed by the tech press. And the tech press starts every review talking about the app and the problem.
Yeah.
They actually had 2 more products that they were supposed to announce this year that they've delayed until they get the app problem fixed.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be their holiday offerings. And here it is October, and they still haven't announced the products. So there's a good chance they're going to miss the holiday business. And as a result, out of the 1,200 people that they have in the company, they've had to lay off 100 because of all these problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a UX problem that's killing a company. All because the CEO, the executive team, the people who made all the important decisions about what to do when and how long to take to do it and what was good enough and what wasn't good enough didn't understand the experience of their customers. They do now. This was a very expensive way to do user research.
Yeah.
It's a $936 million user research project.
Yeah. Yeah. It. I appreciate that, and it's something that's fascinated me as well. And I've seen it across the time that's been happening, and you can see it just spiraled pretty quickly, right? And it's something like this here. It's not just that, even there's sometimes like feedback or problems with a feature that's released or removed or something, whatever else. But this was like a whole rebuild, right? Like a whole kind of reset that fundamentally clearly had a lack of understanding around the user and the experience that they had become accustomed to, and then also were looking for. And
those people were the best customers. They had already spent thousands of dollars. They were all thinking about this new generation of hardware.
yeah,
And now they're walking away from the brand.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess your expectations, like they've obviously, that, as you say, it was around for 5 years. The expectation, obviously, it was growing. It may not have been perfect necessarily, but people were happy with it, if that makes sense. They were used to it. It was working.
They can make it work. There have been complaints for a long time, but they can make it work. It did what they needed it to do.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't have rewritten it, but they should at least understood what people do with their product.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they didn't understand the basics of the user's experience. And because I'm sure the very underfunded software development team, again, I don't know that that's the case, I'm just guessing, that compared to the hardware teams, software got, short shrift because that it's not even a product in their mind, right?
But it's part of the experience.
So the software people are underfunded, and they have this shortened schedule. They are not getting anybody's attention. They focus on just the new hardware. Can we just make the new hardware work? Because that's what everybody else is focused on in the company.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about the millions of customers with older hardware.
Yeah, definitely. And it happens all too often, right? Where it's focusing on, or just a failure, as you say, a failure to understand the experience that people are looking for, and a failure to understand the actual users, and definitely relating to that as well, especially when you're working with our works, not necessarily with a company like Sonos, but where you're either in manufacturing or you are providing something else, and especially the software or that digital experience comes second, right? But overall, it's a part of the experience, right? And if that is completely lacking, and especially if it's the only gateway to actually use the whatever, right? Whether it's Sonos speakers or whatever, if it's the only gateway, then that has to be just as good, if not better, than the actual product itself, right?
Right. It looks nice. The interaction model is a little weird. You keep having to close these weird drawers, but it's learnable. But the biggest issue is it just didn't do the basic things that the customers needed it to do. And the only explanation we have as to why it didn't do that was that they forgot that they built that into the product to start with.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what users actually did with this product. It begs the question if anyone actually used the product themselves.
Yeah.
this forced update, all of this is basic best practice in our industry today. And so I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. Sonos is just a public facing version of a disaster that is happening everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
And
agree.
so this is our future. And the companies that understand how to think strategically about user experience are the ones who are going to emerge victorious, because they're not going to make these mistakes.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, and it's been great, and I appreciate you taking the time. Is there any final comments you would make just around what we've discussed? I think it's been a great conversation.
Know your users.
Yeah.
I mean, really know them. Know their names. Here's the thing. Here's how I know whether a company is working strategically or not. I can walk into a development team and I can ask them what they're working on, and they'll tell me. And I'll say, okay, this thing you're working on right now, can you give me the name of one customer, one user, who will actually have their life improved because of what you're working on right now? And they can't. If they can give me the name of somebody because they've met them and they've seen what they do with the product, then they're working strategically. But most
Yeah.
people can't do that. The developers, the product people, they should be able to name a customer. You know who can name customers? Salespeople, support people. They're the
Yeah.
true user experience people in most organizations. It's just that nobody told them. And they don't talk to product or development. And this is the problem.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So, well, I appreciate the conversation. I do a finale segment with each guest where I just ask the three same questions. So I'd like to get into those now before we
Okay.
finish. The first one is, what's
Can I
one
give the
thing you?
three same answers?
Yeah, absolutely. You, if you want to, I think I know what you'll go with this one, but we'll see. What's one thing you believe businesses are not paying enough attention to right now that will be critical in the next 5 years?
They're users.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll anyone that wants to learn more about that can just go back and re-listen to what we've discussed in this whole episode. So the second one is, what legacy do you want to leave in your industry, and how do you hope your work will influence or shape the future?
People would be talking to their users.
Awesome. I like it. That's great. And then the final one is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self at the start of your career?
Stay away from the anchovies at the pizza bar.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I appreciate your time today as well, Jared. I think it's been a great conversation. I have learned a lot, and yeah, appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, to anyone listening, you can check out Jared's stuff. Where can they find you, Jared?
You can find me on LinkedIn as Jared Spool. You can find me at centercenter.com. You can join our community of 51,000 UX leaders at Leaders of Awesomeness. So if you just Google Leaders of Awesomeness, you'll find it. So those are good starting places. I'm everywhere.
Good, very good. Anyone that's listening, you can check out Jared, find him. And thanks for listening. You can obviously go to the Learning Center at Intuji.com as well, and check out Pulse on all the different channels, YouTube, Spotify, etc., for a different podcasts. And yeah, appreciate your time, Jared. We'll keep in touch. And thanks once again.
Exactly. You know where to find me. Take care.
Thank you.